Good evening, everyone. This is Vibha Nasheen, and I'm doing a reading from the book Messages from the Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. Today, we're going to start with chapter 11, which is Teachers. We also must learn not to just go to those people whose vibrations are the same as ours. It is normal to feel drawn to somebody who is on the same level that you are. But this is wrong. You must also go to those people whose vibrations are wrong with yours. This is the importance in helping these people. Our path is an inward one. This is the more difficult path, the more painful journey. We bear the responsibility of our own learning. Wise teachers walk among us to show us the way, to ease the burden along our spiritual path. Unfortunately, there are also many pretenders in our midst. Whether driven by pride, ego, greed, insecurity, or other selfish forces, they masquerade as teachers or gurus. They tell you what to do when they themselves don't have a clue. Clearly, it is dangerous to follow such people. But how do we, as loving, open minded individuals, separate the wheat from the chaff? The key to discerning a real teacher from a pretender is to follow your own intuitional wisdom. Do the teachings feel right to you? Are they loving, compassionate, non violent, and fear reducing? Do they include all other groups, all other humans as equals, as divine souls on the same path of destiny? Do they teach that one is no better than other? That we are all rowing the same boat? And do they acknowledge that though they can point out the way, they cannot bring you to spiritual fulfillment? Only you can reach your goal, because ultimately your journey home is an inward journey, a personal return. Gurus can teach us skills and techniques. They can increase our understanding of life, death, and spiritual planes. They can help to remove fears and obstacles. They can point out the doorway. But it is we who must go through the door. Because the kingdom of heaven really exists within us. All joy and happiness come from within ourselves. We are not going to be rescued by someone else. As we experience true love and become enlightened, we will save ourselves. Do you remember Flip Wilson, the wonderful comedian whose character Gerard- Geraldine would do something sinful or selfish and then stand, hands on hips, and declare, "The devil made me do it"? What a powerful projection. The idea that we are not responsible for our action is an attractive one. It's awfully expedient to have some outside force to blame. Some people blame fate. Although our lives travel along predetermined courses, fate is not responsible for our actions. And just as we must take complete responsibility for our negative and harmful behavior, so we need to take responsibility for our positive and loving behavior. No one else can do this for us. No devil can harm you, and ultimately, no guru can save you. At a conference in Seattle, where we were both teaching, I heard the brilliant scholar and mystic Jean Houston warn about the danger of blindly following a guru. Remember, Jean said, that Guru is spelled Guru. To my surprise and amusement, the next day, Vanity Fair magazine named me the Guru of Miami. Once at the end of the day, after my staff had left and the office had become quiet in the fading twilight, I sank into a deep meditative state. The day had ended on a frustrating note. And over the years, I have found that meditating in a quiet area around the time of dusk soothes me. My last patient that day had once again been unsuccessful in recovering any past life memories. She had a very difficult time even relaxing and reaching deeper levels of consciousness. She always seemed to become restless at a certain point in relaxation exercise. She would spontaneously return to waking consciousness and implore me to move her into a deeper level. This woman is an avid reader and had read many metaphysical books and articles. She had attended numerous New Age seminars and workshops. She read about and witnessed the experiences of others, but she had no such experiences herself. And she desperately wanted to have her own personal experiences. Lately, she had been reading books about Sai Baba, the famous spiritual teacher from India, and she was considering a trip to India to visit him. Perhaps he could help her past her impasse. I knew immediately that the messages and images flowing into my awareness while meditating that quiet evening pertained to her, my frustrated patient. Our task is not to follow Sai Baba, the message began, but to be Sai Baba. I patiently waited for more. He is love in action, and you must be love in action. Her task in this life is to manifest loving service. At this point, I began to see visual images of my patients' past lives, a kaleidoscope of images flashing before me. I saw many monastic lifetimes, and the answer to her frustration became clear to me. She had lived many lives in solitude, in monasteries and in convents. She had mastered the art of going within, of meditating to deep inner levels. But in the current life, she needed to live in the real world, among real people with real problems, to help these people. She needed to express her love and compassion in a public way. And so a block had been placed on her meditation. Otherwise, she would have reverted back to her golden old of going only to inner states, and she would have neglected her soul's purpose in this life. She would not be acting in the world among the people. As if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was not a failure. She was merely being guided along her chosen path in this life. Been there, done that became her attitude about deep daily meditations. She began to volunteer in programs to help the poor and homeless, and she raised money for many charities. She felt happier than she had ever been. Ironically, as she continued to expand and expanded her charitable work, her ability to meditate began to return. She felt balanced, and her work with me came to a natural end. Our task is not to follow Sai Baba, but to be Sai Baba. Everything will be clear to you in time, but you must have a chance to digest the knowledge that we have given to you already. Years ago, I spoke at a huge New Age meeting held in Los Angeles. Nearly 40,000 people registered and paid money to hear a tremendous assortment of speakers ranging from serious university professors and scientists to upstart opportunists hawking their wares. Physicists rubbed elbows with cult leaders. I became very confused. How do you sort out these people? Can you tell anything about their credentials? I felt like protecting all 40,000. First, it was easy to rule out the speakers who came from other galaxies. Second, 95% of the channelers were either communicating with their subconscious minds or were consciously producing their messages from beyond. Third, I could ignore the tons of crystals being sold from hundreds of booths in the convention area. However, the music was nice, the people extraordinarily friendly. I attended many lectures and workshops. Some of the speakers were brilliant, particularly the scientists. Clearly, they had a great deal to teach. Others were terrible. As I listened to speakers make one outlandish statement after another without any confirming information or studies, I tried to gauge the audience's reaction. Much to my dismay, I saw many people just nodding their heads, accepting without thought or challenge. Most of the 40,000 had come because they wanted something more in their lives. Many wanted some confirmation of their own psychic and intuitive experience. They wanted new experiences and insights. They wanted to grow. They wanted to be stimulated. They wanted what we all want, a way to find and experience joy and peace. But most had left their critical minds at home. I wish I could have addressed the entire 40,000. I wanted to tell them to stop looking for external answers, for quick fixes and quick cures. I wanted to tell them to look within. Now I will give advice I would like to have given to the 40,000 people so eager to change their lives. Become more spiritual. Spend more time praying, giving, helping others, loving. Volunteer and express generosity and love. Get rid of pride, ego, selfishness, anger, guilt, vanity, and ambition. Spend less time accumulating things, worrying, being in the past or the future, hurting others, and being violent in any way. Never accept any idea before bouncing it off your intuitive wisdom. Does it encourage love, kindness, peace, and unity? Or does it encourage separateness, division, hate, self centeredness, and violence? You are immortal. You are here to learn, to grow wise, to become godlike. What you learn here, you take with you when you die. You cannot take anything else. It is so simple. The kingdom of heaven is within. Stop seeking gurus and instead find yourself. Soon you will find your real home. Chapter 12, Psychics and Mediums. Learning in the spiritual state is much faster, far accelerated from learning in the physical state. But we choose what we need to learn. If we need to come back to work through a relationship, we come back. If we are finished with that, we go on. In spiritual form, you can always contact those that are in physical state if you choose to. But only if there is important there, if you have to tell them something that they must know. Sometimes you can appear before that person and look the same way you did when you were here. Other times you just make a mental contact. Sometimes the messages are cryptic, but most often the person knows what it pertains to. They understand its mind to mind contact. From my research and experience with thousands of patients and my investigation into the abilities of some of the most talented psychic mediums in the world, it appears that we are not alone in the universe. Beyond our physical dimension, the unseen world appears to be populated by a myriad of spirits of varying abilities and progression. Some are highly evolved, and others are much less so. Some have had physical lives on the earth and are in between lifetimes. Others have graduated and do not have to return unless they choose in order to help mankind. Still, in our physical world, helping us from the other side. Whether we call them spirits or angels or guides does not matter. There is considerable anecdotal evidence that they exist, and this evidence has been gathered from many diverse cultures and religions over many centuries. Babies and young children are often aware of the loving spirits or energies around us, but their communication skills are limited. We adults tend not to believe them, relegating their observations and perceptions to the realm of imagination and fantasy. Yet, what they are aware of is often very real. When we die and leave our physical bodies, we proceed to that level of consciousness at which we are most comfortable. The more loving and wise we are, the more advanced we will be on the other side. I am still amazed by the similarity of the knowledge my patients transmit to me while they are in deep meditative or hypnotic states. High school dropouts, nuclear physicists, attorneys, and professional athletes alike tell me virtually the same thing about the spiritual state and our purpose on this earth. This lends considerable credence to their experiences. Once more, I want to emphasize that these findings are clinical, accumulated from many hundreds of patients. Finding so much similarity and so many correlations is highly significant statistically. Certain individuals are more adept at communicating knowledge from spiritual sources. The late American psychic Edgar Cayce is one example, and his work has been carefully studied and analyzed. We all know about the skills of some of the seers and clairvoyants of the East, such as Paramhansa Yoganand, but people with similar abilities also exist in the Western world. I have been blessed to meet with a few of them, and I have been doubly blessed to discover that their work validates the experiences and accounts of my patients. I evaluate my experiences with the trained mind of a psychiatrist. Being analytical is completely compatible with being open minded. I have met people with amazing abilities, and I have met those whose skills are limited or non existent. Spirits, as well as people, are of many levels. Those of the lower levels can transmit misleading or even harmful messages, usually to people with limited mediumistic ability or lack of proper spiritual development. Spirits of higher levels seem to be accessible only to those people with higher spiritual development and or those with proper intent, those without ulterior motives for self gain at the expense of others. When you meet a seer or wise teacher whose motive is to help others to understand, to heal other people's heart, and to assist them on their spiritual path, a profound shift in your consciousness can occur. The world will seem different, filled with unseen helpers, and bathed in a loving energy that refreshes and renews your soul. You yourself may spontaneously experience other life transforming events, dreams, deja vu experiences, clairvoyant episodes, and other paranormal occurrences, including near death experience, can induce a permanent awakening to the true nature of reality. Meditation can increase the likelihood that one or more of these experiences may happen. But we humans tend to forget, or at least to rationalize and minimize any experience we consider improbable or extraordinary. Moreover, we allow our logical minds to subtract the spiritual meaning from the experience. Someone once said that what we call coincidences are really God's fingerprints. I cannot regress enough of you, nor I can train enough therapists to treat everyone in the world. I can, however, share these true stories and experiences with you, reminding you once again about your spiritual nature and about the abundant, loving, and helping energy that fills and surrounds you at all times. As the Christian mystics taught, you are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. As I have explored more and more of the human mind and the limits of consciousness, I have come across some people with extraordinary abilities. They seem to possess a sixth sense, an inner knowing or intuition, and sometimes the information received in this manner can be very accurate. Others have mediumistic abilities, the capacity to receive and to transmit messages and knowledge from beings on the other side, whether from spirit guides, from loved ones who have died, or from other sources of consciousness outside the usual limits of the body and the brain. People who are truly gifted need not cheat, use tricks, or magic. They know things they cannot know under our present conceptions of how human minds operate. Their abilities are real. On the other hand, the field of psychics and mediums is filled with opportunists, fakes, and manipulators. It is very important to be able to separate the real ones from the fakes. Here are some thumb rules. 1. We are all psychic and possess intuitive abilities far beyond what we know or use. Carefully weigh any information or material you receive from a psychic on the scales of your own intuitive wisdom. If the information given to you does not feel right or does not fit, it probably is incorrect. You are psychic too. Number 2. All the information received by psychics or mediums is necessarily processed by the medium before it can be transmitted to you. Therefore, the information can be significantly distorted by the psychic's mental processes. The amount of distortion depends on the medium's individual agenda. Psychics are human, so even a gifted psychic can deliver distorted information if his or her personal problems, moods, concerns, or desires interfere with the psychic process. Opportunities. Third, opportunists usually charge a lot of money, attempt to make you dependent on their advice, and set themselves up as special, with abilities no one else possesses, or as gurus you must follow. Try to exit quickly when you become aware of these tactics. I was amazed to find that in South America, gifted mediums and healers, many of whom make their livings in their professions, will often travel to the home of a financially needy person who needs help or healing. They take time off from their work, pay for their own transportation, and charge their clients nothing. Several of these visits may occur over a 1 or 2 week interval. 4. True growth is an inner process. While a psychic can help you learn to access your inner wisdom, with enough meditation you become your own psychic and transcend the need for external guidance. In the beginning, however, the validation from a psychic or medium functioning with a minimum discount of distortion can be very helpful. 5. Psychic and mediumistic abilities are not necessarily correlated with spiritual evaluation. Some very gifted mediums have been known to behave quite selfishly, even despicably. Don't confer unwarranted spiritual status on someone merely because he or she possesses extraordinary paranormal abilities. You set yourself up to be manipulated and victimized when you believe that because he or she is necessarily an ethical person. 6. It is also wise to remember that for the most part, mediums and psychics are not therapists or mental health counselors trained in therapeutic techniques. Do not expect your fears, symptoms, or problems to disappear miraculously in the wake of a session with a psychic. Do not anticipate a therapeutic interpretation that will suddenly tie all your issues together and provide a healing understanding. This is not what they do. Lacking years of training, most are not prepared to analyze and interpret the material that may arise. They discern it and they present it to you. You may receive a glimpse into another world, and this glimpse may be extremely valuable and healing to you. But such a glimpse is not psychotherapy. If a medium tells you something inaccurate or even hurtful, remember that he or she is not necessarily a wise and compassionate therapist. Judge the medium if you must, the same as you would any other person. Do not surrender your power or integrity to anyone. 7. While we often admire and even envy people with advanced psychic or mediumistic abilities, we should not lose sight of our real goals. We are here to learn and to grow as spiritual beings, to become more loving and more compassionate, to achieve a balance and harmony in our lives, to feel and maintain a solid sense of inner peace. We are not here, again, with some few exceptions, to become famous psychics. Psychics and mediumistic talents may increase as we progress along the spiritual path, but they are not the goal. They line the path. They shed some light on the trail, but they are not an end in themselves. Years ago, I heard a story about Buddha and his disciples. One day they were meditating in a quiet garden when one of the disciples, deep in a meditative state, began to levitate. Feeling his body lifting itself up from the ground, he became very excited and very proud of his accomplishment. He stirred himself from his meditation and felt himself back on the ground. He stood up and walked up to Buddha. "I have mastered levitation," the disciple announced. "That's nice," Buddha responded, "but don't let it distract you from your meditation." 8. Some gifted people appear to be able to communicate with spirits on the other side. However, we may interpret the possible methods and mechanisms. Something very real and powerful is happening. Because someone has died and returned to spiritual form does not immediately confer great wisdom to this being. The same is true for spiritual guides and guardians. There exists a hierarchy of levels, from ignorant to foolish spirits to those who are truly advanced masters. Obviously, it is important to discern the differences. If someone is channeling a foolish and ignorant spirit, why in the world should you listen to what is being said? How do you know? Again, use your intuitional wisdom. You can recognize high level spirits by the loving content as well as the accuracy of their messages. They often have access to private details that validate the experience. 9. The medium may receive messages from the other side in the form of symbols, metaphors, or visions. This part of the communication might be very accurate. However, in an attempt to interpret or make sense of the symbol, the medium often introduces distortion to the message. The medium's interpretation could be misleading or inaccurate. For example, the medium might become aware of a rose and ask if the client has a garden or if flowers are important to the client. The client may become confused. In actuality, the image could be a reference to the client's deceased grandmother whose name was Rose. Ideally, the medium should merely describe what he or she sees. Does Rose mean something to you? Sometimes, particularly when the messages received are in form of words, the medium may find the communication unclear, as if he or she were listening to a radio with heavy static. Words can be misinterpreted under these conditions. This interference explains why mediums are often asking the spirits with whom they are in contact for a yes or no answer to their questions. The answers tell them whether they are accurately reading or interpreting the signals being received. 10. Gifted psychics and mediums can help us enormously, especially when they provide glimpses of the other side and bring us messages from our departed loved ones. Through them, we experience the reality of life after death, the nature of our immortal souls, the opportunities for being reunited with our families and friends. They can provide guidance about how to live our lives, about values, about what is important and what is not. But ultimately, we need to experience these things directly within ourselves. When we experience, then we really know. When we can hear or see or sense our deceased loved ones directly, then we know we are separated only in a temporary way. When we can, with ecstasy and wonder, directly experience the divine, we awaken like the sages and mystics before us. That brings me to the end of this session. I shall get back to you tomorrow to continue the same chapter somewhere around 7 in the evening. Till that time, this is Vibha Nashin signing off. Take care. Good night.